the thing that sticks out to me is that Burnham summons a tribunal on Vulcan, which has been there since the days of Surrock. So it's like the founding of the Vulcan logical movement. Mm-hmm. And she says, she says, what the fuck did you do? She said, I've summoned a logic tribunal. We're gonna hammer out the problem that we've all got going on here. The Vulcan ambassador beams over and says, as you know, the way that we do this logic tribunal is we engage in the most common logic fallacy of all time, the ad hominem attack. And we are just going to attack your character. So I sat there dumbfounded by this because it's just it's the most obvious logic fallacy. To have the character come in and say, this tribunal is not about the problem. It's about us tearing apart your character to say that your solution is not any good. That doesn't make any fucking sense. That makes sense in Discovery. It does not make sense in any sense of what the Vulcans are supposed to be. Even, we've had our problems with Enterprise Vulcans because they're ill-defined as to what they're trying to do with them. And there's a whole problem with the Enterprise Vulcan portrayal early on. This was a huge problem for me that when I first watched it, I thought they could get around because the key out here is that the Romulans have reunified with the Vulcans. And so I thought what they were going to be doing was that when they had to merge their societies, their outlook on logic became different because the Romulans are now mixed in there and they're sort of causing problems with it. But the episode itself says this has been the way for all time. This has always been the way of things, and it doesn't make any sense. I was really looking forward to a episode where the obvious parallel of what they're doing here is the divided political structure of America, where you have two groups vying for control on this planet that were of one piece, and something has changed over the 1,000 years, and now the Romulans and Vulcans are together, and their mixing has caused a strange, like, who can tell what logic is argument. You know how we're in like information bubbles, and now it's like who can tell what's real when you're in your own information silo. I thought they were going to do that with the Romulans and Vulcans. I was like, oh my god, a Discovery episode that's actually both ties into the lore and seems randomly applicable to today's world, but they don't do anything on any of it. It all is for naught. It all doesn't matter, and none of it ties back to itself.
Well, and it also, I mean, she convenes a logic tribunal that eventually the end of it is her mom going, that's why she's asking you to take a leap of faith. And it's like, motherfucker, come on, man. What? Do they know what words mean?
I know. Yeah.
On this show, like what the?
And I liked the idea of this logic tribunal. I was like, this is a pretty good idea. I can see a lot of narrative stuff being built out of this. I liked the middle Vulcan, the Black Vulcan, who was like the leader of them all. I thought his Vulcan portrayal was actually dead on. I liked their portrayal of Vulcans in this. I like they're not cruel, but they're like extremely matter of fact in what they're trying to do. And I was like, all right, this seems to be going places. But all they talk about is, why can we believe you? You can't be trusted. It's like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything about this problem of the data that you're trying to share with each other? It has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. And also, I for the first like half of that tribunal stuff, I don't know what the fuck they were talking about. Yeah. They were just like they're essentially talking about file extensions. And it's like sbq.exe cannot be shared with you because your internal processor does not. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it's one of those things where they're talking about this and the music is kind of going like, dun, 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 trying to make it intense. And I'm just not really sure what the stakes are here, because like Burnham is acting as though there's an asteroid headed for the Federation, and unless she gets this data to figure out what happened to the burn, the asteroid's going to destroy everything. Whereas it's like, I don't know, what's another couple days? Come back with better. If you don't have evidence now, come back in a week when you get something better. You know, like the dilithium already blew up. It's not. There's no overarching threat really that is making this a has to be right now solution. You could lose your tribunal and come back after you've explored whatever and be like, oh, actually it's this. I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, now we're gonna, I don't know why it has to be a one and done kind of thing.
Well, that's the thing that I thought was missing from the tribunal, and I thought was there on my first viewing. I thought the back and forth was more nuanced and layered about what Burnham's ties to this was, and that they were making a better argument against her than that they actually are. To your point about just coming back, but it's also the link between Burnham's personal struggle about whether she belongs on Discovery feels not perfectly fit against what the Vulcans are trying to push back against. They do combine in this way, but it doesn't feel like there's a natural link between the two of them. So the writing has to move at a pretty quick pace to get you through that and to sort of wash over the fact that all of this is kind of detached from each other, and that the courtroom thing is really just a show for Burnham to learn something. It's not that the characters aren't really having a conversation about something. Right. They're just kind of doing the show provocatively for everybody. Yeah. And that's not really intentional, but that's just the way that the conflict that Burnham is having about whether or not she belongs on Discovery is tying into this, can they trust the Federation argument? And that really, it leaves you just wanting more out of that scene and sequence and stuff like that. And I was really just disappointed with, like, I love the idea of her finally running into Vulcans who put her through her paces about this stuff. It's just so poorly executed that it doesn't matter towards the end of it. It's sad.